It's now 18:30, so I'm going to switch the meeting to live.
Thank you, Darren.
Over to you.
Come up as live. So thank you very much, everyone. Welcome to the September Cabinet. I hope you all had a chance to take some form of break over the past few weeks, over the summer recess, as we call it. But I do understand many haven't been able to because of the continuation of the COVID pandemic. So present at this meeting are members of the Cabinet, and we have a number of council officers. When they speak, they can introduce themselves. Oops, I'm picking up some background noise from somewhere. So I'd also like to welcome Councillor Sachin Shah, who's Chair of Scrutiny, to the meeting, who is in attendance for item 11, which is the Harrow Strategic Development Partnership appointment of preferred bidder. I'd also like to welcome the representatives from Addison Young and Pinsett Masons, who have supported the tendering process for the Harrow Strategic Development Partnership and the appointment of the preferred bidder, and are here to assist with the answering of any questions members may have on the proposals. Before we proceed, can I remind all attendees to turn their mobile phones to silent, and can I also refer members and officers to the published protocols for holding virtual meetings with Harrow Council, particularly noting the following. So the following items we need to note, if possible, is can you please ensure that they put their microphones on mute unless speaking, as we wouldn't want to be distracted by background noise. Members of the Cabinet should also ensure they have their videos on at all times. Other members and participants should switch off their videos and put microphones on mute until they are invited to speak. If anyone would like to speak on an item, could you please indicate by using the raised hand function, and remember to unmute before speaking. Could you also wait to be asked to speak so we can ensure just one person is speaking at a time. In case of a technical problem, the meeting will adjourn until the issue is resolved. If the technical problem persists and the meeting is incorrect, the meeting will be adjourned and rearranged for a later date. And if I am the one who can't get back into the meeting, then Councillor Ferry would take over the chairmanship as the deputy leader. The meeting is being audio and video recorded and will be available to watch listen on the website. So apologies for absence, none have been received. Moving on to declarations of interest. The declarations of disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests from members of the Cabinet have been published and are taken as read. Can I have any declarations from other members present in the virtual meeting? I don't see any, so I'll take that as any at this moment in time. If you become aware of any interest during the meeting, please let me know immediately and we'll record it into notice. Item 3 is petitions. We have not been notified any. Are there any petitions from councillors, from Cabinet, sorry? No one is indicating. Do we have any petitions from councillors present at the meeting? No one is indicating. And do we have any other people present who may wish to present a petition tonight? No, that we haven't received any. So, oops. So move on to item number 4, which is public questions. We have 15 minutes allowed for asking and answering questions from the public. We have received one public question, which is from a member of the public set out in the question pack available online, and that is from Matthew Goodwin Freeman. Matthew, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you very much. I just want to quickly say thank you to the council as a whole for the thanks and the minute silence it took on the 27th of February for the passing of my grandfather, John Goodwin, who was a former councillor and magistrate for Harrow Council. I know with the difficult months that have happened since, that's meant a lot when we finally found out. So thank you very much. My question is, during this pandemic, many individuals of Harrow have enjoyed prolonged periods outdoors exploring our local area, taking in nature, working on their physical exercise and so forth. However, with this increase in footfall to some of Harrow's most green spaces has also come an increase in littering, fly tipping and inconsiderate behaviour. I am fortunate to live within the Pinnerwood Farm Conservation Area and almost weekly have had to pick up and throw away drink bottles, beer bottles, food packaging, waste and the like, as well as flag up and report several fly tipping experiences in the midst of a pandemic.
Can you come and help?
There are no bins near or around the area. The nearest public bin is just under 1 mile away in Hatch End playing fields. And as for signs that ask people to stick to the pathways, pick up after their dogs, or not to litter and be considerate of residents, none. And this story I see replicated in green spaces all around Harrow, parks and playing fields, of which I have heard there are petitions circulating in the future. In a time where the word community has never been so important, what is the council going to do about reminding people to be a part of, not a problem for Harrow's community?
Thank you, Matthew. Varsha? We can't hear you at the moment, Varsha. One moment, please.
Councillor Palmer, you are on mute at the moment.
Varsha, you need to unmute yourself.
She is saying she knows, but she's got some problems. So what we'd be looking for is a toolbar in the middle of the page or a toolbar at the top, which should give you a mute button. Councillor Henton, is it possible to move on whilst we try and resolve this?
Yes, what we'll do is we'll move to the councillor questions. Once we've completed the councillor questions, we'll come back to Matthew's question. He's already asked it, so we can just sort of go straight into the answer at that time. So that means we move.
Sorry, Graham, I think I'm unmuted. Is that okay if I quickly say?
Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you for your question. We have bins in all our public and open spaces and are in the process of installing new bins and replacing old street bins. We do have signage up in these areas, and unfortunately some people do get angry with us for telling them what to do, and some simply just ignore and don't comply. We do work closely and together with our community volunteer groups to keep our borough clean and tidy, but it is all our ownerships to keep our environment clean and tidy for everyone to enjoy. But we will continue to work on this and keep working with our community groups to keep our environment clean and tidy. Thank you. That's great.
Sorry, I got slightly disconnected there.
Just stay here for a few minutes until I ask questions.
I can hear you whispering though, Varsha. Matthew, did you have a supplementary question?
I just wanted to ask if it was possible how the Cabinet will consider how it will reconnect to the community it represents over the coming weeks and months. Because right now, avoiding the current elephant in the room, we have barriers in Queensbury that are blocking local businesses. There's cycle lanes that have been put up overnight that are inconsiderate to safety. The Harrow Council was the slowest in paying out government business grants in the country, and every week fly tipping and littering is at record highs, and all of this without mentioning COVID or Brexit.
Okay, so basically we do communicate with the residents with all the different things that are going on through all the different medias that are available to us, whether social media, website. The barriers and the cycle lanes that you talk about are government initiatives which was put there to ease the lockdown. And for the safety of our residents. We will be consulting on some of the stuff, and you know, it is a bit unfair to say we don't. We do communicate with our residents and we do tell them what's going on. You know, if people feel they don't, if there's some other means, then please tell us. But we do use our magazine, all the social media and our websites to let people know what's going on.
Thank you, Master. So I think we should move forward onto councillor questions. Sorry, my machine's running a bit slow at the moment, but we'll catch up. So we have 7 questions have been received, and I will take them in the order they appear in the question pack, which is online. Questions not responded to during this meeting will be answered in writing. We've allowed 15 minutes for councillor questions, which is as per the Constitution. So Marilyn, you have the first question, question 1. I saw Marilyn there just now. You're on mute, Marilyn.
Right, I'm going to start again. Apologies, I thought I was unmuted. This is a question for Councillor Keith Ferry, Deputy Leader and Portfolio Holder for Regeneration, Planning and Employment. At the 2nd of September Planning Committee meeting, you made 2 statements. One is that Waitrose in Iceland and Harrow are going to be redeveloped with a small Waitrose on site. And 2 is that the council cannot win an appeal on the Hive and wasted £100,000 defending unsuccessful appeals. Can you offer the people of Harrow evidence that your statements are accurate?
Yes, I can. On the 6th of May of this year, I received an email from a developer saying that they were working in conjunction with Waitrose. And I must point out that when I made the statement at the planning committee, I was referring to the Waitrose site and not the Waitrose and Iceland site. And this developer said that they were working with Waitrose to redevelop the site for 123 apartments and a 10,000 square foot retail area. And that's where I based that statement upon. With respect to the second part of your question, there have been 3 appeals on the Hive site. Application 665/13, which was refused in September 2013 by the committee. The inspectorate allowed an appeal in December 2014 and awarded costs of £30,000 against the council. We incurred legal fees of application 3255/16 was refused under delegated powers. The Planning Inspectorate allowed the appeal in December 2016 and there were no costs. Application 5204/16 was refused by delegated powers in June 2017. The appeal was allowed by the Inspectorate and they awarded costs of £9,000 against the council. If you total that up, we have provided finance external to the council of £44,000, and I suggest if we put in the officer time in fighting all of these 3 appeals, then the overall figure would not be far short of £100,000. And may I say, I do not like the insinuation that I have misled the committee when I provided background information in my possession for the committee's information.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith. Marilyn, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do actually. First of all, as regards the comment on Waitrose, And please, I want to make it clear, I'm not suggesting, and I don't think my question says anything about misleading anyone, but I think I was more concerned about your comment on Waitrose in that it didn't really have anything to do with what we were talking about. It was more in response to Councillor Robson's not actually understanding or knowing where it was. And I think the problem is that when you actually drill down into it, this is quite commercially sensitive. And the manager of Waitrose doesn't know anything about it, and neither do their staff. I think you need to be very careful, if I may suggest, rather than suggesting that you're misleading people, I think you need to be very careful what you say. And the fact that you, and you're a very senior councillor with a lot of influence, get an email from somebody which could be speculative, doesn't necessarily mean that you need to make an announcement. As regards the Hive, what I actually was referring to, and I probably did make a mistake not making it clear enough in the question, was I think you were referring to the appeal on the stadium, because other appeals for other elements like floodlighting and that are not really germane to this. We're talking about a certain specific area within the Hive where the hotel proposal, which was recommended for refusal with 8 really sustainable reasons, was referring to putting the hotel around the stadium. And if you're talking about something that's relevant to this, and I think you were actually, we didn't actually spend £100,000 on that because we didn't defend it.
Marilyn, could you get to the point of your question, please?
Yes, I will. But the point is that the reason why we didn't defend it is because we couldn't, because of motion that you put to the committee. So I would like to make it very clear, and I'd like to ask you, do you not think that it's important that when you give an actual reason why you want to overturn a recommendation for refusal with 8 reasons, that you make it clear exactly what you're referring to, and not just throw in a figure which I think is about the stadium, which actually we didn't defend, and therefore we didn't spend any money on that. Thank you, Alida.
I'm not too sure what the question is, but the committee met in January of 2014. The legal advice, which I pointed out, which cost us £5,000, suggested that the appeal was indefensible. We therefore did not put up, just a moment, we did not put up a defence to the appeal, and the appellant was granted £30,000 in abortive costs, which he'd already incurred before we made the decision not to defend the appeal.
Righto.
Thank you, Marilyn. We now move on to question number 2, which I believe is from Anjana Patel. Anjana?
Thank you, Leader. This is a question to you, Councillor Graham Hanson, Leader and Portfolio Holder for Strategy, Partnership, Devolution and Customer Services. Do you support 100% the decision taken by Councillor Ferry to keep parking bays blocked of the Queensberry shops?
I do, and I do support the decision for a number of valid reasons. As you will be aware, the Secretary of State for Transport informed councils that the government expects local authorities to make significant changes to their road layouts, to provide space for pedestrians to safely return to our high streets, and also to allow people to travel to work and school by bicycle. And it is government funding that has paid for the street space schemes. And as you are also aware, these are temporary measures which may cause some inconvenience to car drivers, but quite rightly, the council's priority is to address the ongoing health crisis and to ensure the public health and well-being of the local community. The introduction of the measures should give customers and staff more confidence to visit local shops by making more space available to get around safely and support trade for local businesses. It is important to note that restricting parking on one side of the service road in Queensberry and erecting the pedestrian barriers is a temporary measure which is only required as long as the government social distancing rules are enforced. You will note from Prime Minister Johnson's statement yesterday, the government are seriously concerned about the rising cases and have strengthened regulations to ensure social distancing can be maintained, and the updated guidance will ensure councils are providing these adjustments to our pavements and highways. We also have also seen an increase in cases within Harrow, and it's right that we make these spaces as safe as possible when outside shops. I think it's also important to note that not all parking is being restricted and many parking areas remain available for use. And as I said earlier, these are temporary measures which are being reviewed on a monthly basis. But I think the key part is it's our responsibility as councillors to ensure that residents are kept as safe as possible during this pandemic and until it is fully under control. And once the COVID pandemic is under control, then we can look at reinstating parking. Did you have a supplementary question, Angela?
Yes, I do. I disagree with you that it is a government guidelines. It is government guidelines, but it says minimum 2 meters, and those payments are already 2 meters, 2.1 meters wide. And actually, this is more to do with TfL. Anyway, my supplementary question is, at the TASAP meeting on the 10th of August, we heard a deputation from a business owner on behalf of the shops affected by the street space scheme. He left the meeting in no doubt that the loss of customer parking was destroying the businesses in his shopping parade. Do you believe that Councillor Ferry is a better judge of the situation than the business owners? And if so, will you take the responsibility when local shops close down due to your policy?
Graham, you're muted.
Can't hear you, Councillor Graham Henson.
Muted myself, but I don't know what I was trying to say is I don't know why you're trying to distance yourself from statements made by government ministers. The Minister for Transport, Mr. Shapps, made a quite stark statement in May of this year to tell councils to start looking about widening pavements to allow distancing to take place. They wanted councils to respond in a very short space of time, and this was reinforced by statements in June and July, also by the Prime Minister, who insisted that we need to, councils are instructed to implement a lot of schemes to enable the safe passage of people on the high streets and also to allow for safe cycling arrangements. Now, going to the statement about some of the adjustments that have been made, all trade in shops has reduced, and that is something our economic development team have been working hard around to try and capture the Shop Local campaign that has been going on over the last few months through Mark Billington's team. We're looking about other ways of supporting shops to remain open as well as we can. But the important part of it all the evidence that comes through, that is from scientists right through to government ministers at the other end of the spectrum, all say that where people can actually walk safely to the shops, you can see an increase in trade that's people taking place. It's where they cannot pass each other that the trade is reducing, and that is significantly evidenced across London as a whole. So going back to your original question, it isn't like we stopped all parking across Queensbury that you're trying to sort of insinuate in some of that question. It's a few spaces that are there which to allow that people to move safely down that pavement. And so trying to say that it's the technical and other advice that is received that we've taken due regard to, and not just us, because we had to put this bid in through TfL and Department of Transport before it could be signed off and they allocated the funding. So it is done with evidence-based and not opinion-based. Thank you. We now move on to question moving on to question number 2. If you'd like to ask your second question.
Yes, I will. But what you have said is not correct. Councillor, this is a question to Councillor Varsha Perma, portfolio holder for environment. Hi, Varsha. Would you describe the connectivity of Harrow's cycling routes as disjointed?
Thank you, Anjana, for your question. The answer is no, but I will explain. Our cycle lanes are designed to link key areas such as town centres, transport hubs, and based on the London Underground network. For example, the Honeypot Lane is part of the Jubilee line. Now, as you know, we have worked on the cycle routes for many, many years. However, while you're cycling around, maybe if you tell me which lane is disjointed, then I'll get the team to have a look at it.
To be honest, I don't cycle, but I have already seen it that it is disjointed. If you look at the roundabout of Queensbury and then you go to Honeypot Lane, where is the cycle lane in between? There is no cycle lane. I can give you many examples of that, but I've got a supplementary question. The complete lack of cohesion between Harrow cycling routes is a long-standing problem in Harrow. Unfortunately, the strategic cycling schemes you are implementing do nothing to resolve this. If anything, they exacerbate the problem. Do you realize, do you really expect residents to use the new dedicated cycle lanes when they start, stop and disappear so abruptly, usually immediately before busy roundabouts and junctions? And that's exactly what I'm referring to. And you can go and have a look at it for yourself. It's just one example.
Well, thank you. I have seen my cycle lanes and I can assure you they are linked up. And as you know, and I've said this already in my answer previously, that we have been working on this for many, many years. And the new lanes that you are referring to, they have been put in there and they do link to the network, as I have mentioned already. So that's the answer. It is linked.
No,
Thank you.
I will disagree. Yes, thank you.
Question number, your
thank
question
you,
number 4.
Yes, Leader, I'll ask my next question. I disagree with you, Councillor Palmer. How many trees have been planted in Harrow with funding from the Mayor of London as part of his promise to plant 2 million trees by 2020? And we are in September.
Okay, so thank you for that again. As you are very well aware that we are in the middle of a health crisis and non-essential work was stopped. So things are getting back to a bit of normality, but slowly. And you also know that the trees are planted at certain times of the year. However, with all of those issues, we still managed to plant 2,630 trees, which over 2,000 were planted in Brockley Hill and Newton Park.
Do you have a supplementary question, Anjana?
Yes, I do, Leader. In fact, this year is the Mayor's extra year that he got because of COVID. So that's not an excuse. GLA figure shows that by July 2020, only 3,088 trees have been planted in Harrow. This is more than what you just said, using the Mayor's fund. London-wide, the Mayor has only planted 287,004 trees, which is woefully short of his own million tree target. As this council has declared a climate emergency, will you take this opportunity to condemn Mayor Khan for his failure, Varsha?
Well, I would leave that to you, Anjana. I'm sure you are very capable of condemning him, not me, okay? So.
You are a portfolio holder, so I'm asking you because we haven't done enough in Harrow. Thank you.
But I did say that we are in the middle of a crisis, and you have to understand that as well.
Thank you. We now move on to the next question, which is from Councillor Richard Ormond. I think you're on mute, Richard.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Thank you. And this question is to Councillor Henson. When do you expect live council and other meetings to take place?
To be quite honest, I do miss the face-to-face meetings of pre-COVID and that social interaction. But with us still being within a COVID pandemic, we are planning for all members' meetings to be virtual until at least the end of this calendar year. We are hopeful that meetings in person may be able to resume next spring, but we are limited in our ability to do so at present by a number of important factors, and these include things like councillors' confidence to attend such meetings given their underlying personal health circumstances, the COVID secure limits on numbers in council meetings, our IT capacity to support hybrid meetings, and I'm sure you will agree we must not ignore the government's guidance on indoor gatherings. We will of course keep this situation under review as local and national circumstances change, but I do really look forward to the day when I can say to you, Richard, don't have to say to you, Richard, to turn your microphone on when we're online.
I look forward to it as well, because these meetings, better than nothing though they are stilted, and we don't get any proper lively political debate and exchange of views in them. All over the borough, members of the public in churches, businesses, temples, synagogues, mosques, etc. are getting out and doing their best to bring civil life back to life properly. At my church, we have masses or church openings for private prayer every day of the week now. I have people over 80 reading lessons there, and themselves showing a lot of they're being very careful, they're distancing, doing everything sensibly, but we need to get out into the outside world and live our lives again. Those people are showing a lot of leadership. Isn't it time that the political leadership of the borough now got out of the comfort of their own homes and matched those people? They can do it very carefully, socially distanced, etc., but they need to be doing it, and the end of the calendar year, I'd suggest, isn't good enough. Do you agree with that?
Well, as I said at the beginning, Richard, my preference would be to return back to face-to-face meetings within the Civic Centre, where we could have that sort of interaction that I think is missing from online meetings. But it has to be in a safe environment, and we need to follow the government regulations and guidance around that. We are still in the middle of a pandemic. We've seen rising cases, and we'll see that in the report later tonight on the agenda. So we wouldn't want to bring people back just because we'd like to do something. We have to make sure it's in a safe environment. We've also done testing on the Civic Centre capability of having meetings, and it isn't suitable to arrange for those meetings to take place. The numbers are so small that it wouldn't manage it in a safe environment. And I also have to say that the regulations don't allow these meetings, hybrid meetings, to take place in councils. It's to pass legislation that has not been changed at all since the pandemic started, and because they understand probably that we need to make sure around the safety. So I do agree with you that I do appreciate the probably more appreciate the face-to-face meetings. I probably have some views about online meetings, while they do have their use. Now they're very useful. It does miss that social interaction, so we will when it is safe to do so. So thank you very much, Richard. Did you had the next question?
Yes.
Question number 6.
This is also to you, Leader. Why is the council's IT being found so wanting?
This question will be answered by Councillor Adam Swirsky, who has cabinet members' responsibility for IT. So, Adam, are you there?
Thank you, Chair. I'm here. Yes, thank you, Councillor Armand, for the question. And over the last 10 years, as our funding has been cut back, we've had a clear priority to prioritise frontline services and protecting them over the internal functions of the council. And that's why, over time, we've invested less in IT compared to our frontline services. When it comes to IT and the scarce resources we've had available, we've made those, we've prioritised IT services that are resident facing. And that's why our My Harrow account was one of the national case studies for the National Innovation Programme. And it's also why we believe we have the most personalised website now, the new Harrow Council website, of any municipal area globally that we've identified. So we believe that, you know, where we have made investments in IT, they've been effective. But of course, we recognise that the internal IT of the council has been neglected over the past decade. And over the last couple of years, we've launched a major programme to modernise Harrow Council's IT, but also ways of working around that. And we've just now seen all that bear fruit.
Thank you. I was aware that you're the portfolio holder responsible for IT. I put this question down for Councillor Henson for a purpose which will emerge in a moment, but nevertheless, I'll press on with you, Councillor Swirsky. I put the question down partly because your cabinet paper in July accepted that the organisation was shown during the COVID crisis not to have had good IT, and because of your comment at Overview and Scrutiny on the 7th of July that for a decade you had underinvested, and also you went on in another venue to say we'd have world-class IT within about 18 months. If it's possible to do that in the next 18 months, it would have been possible to have done it, notwithstanding reductions in central government grant to the council during that period. The reason I put this question down for Councillor Henson, and my supplementary is to ask to what extent does your administration bear responsibility or accept responsibility for the parlous state of the council's IT, is because a decade ago, of course, is precisely when your party took control of the council, during which time for 1 year, 14 to 15, Councillor Henson himself had the portfolio for resources, including IT. So do you accept responsibility for poor decisions and poor priorities during that decade, or is it simply going to be the old tale of blaming central government for everything?
Well, Councillor Almond, I know I'm but a pale imitation of Councillor Henson, but I will try and answer your supplementary question as well. And first of all, to say that I take full responsibility for the fact that when faced with incredibly tough choices, we chose to prioritise frontline services that are most benefit and have the highest impact to residents, and not the internal capabilities of the council. Over time, I fully accept, and as you pointed out, have said, that over time that underinvestment in the internal capabilities of the council accumulates. And given the pace of technology change, we recognised over the last couple of years that we needed to make a step change in both our investments in IT, but actually also HR. And I think collectively that amounts to a major modernisation of Harrow Council. Now, I'm very hesitant to use the word world class when it comes to talking about our services, because the government have unfortunately tarnished the phrase world class and world beating so badly. But I do believe that we have this major opportunity now, as we, with a fantastic new directive IT, put over £10 million into both new kit for staff, new systems, new telephony software, a whole range, moving to the cloud, a whole range of approaches, not only to make sure that we have best-in-class technology available for council staff to serve residents, but also that we're taking the opportunity to completely rethink the way that those services operate so that we can give the customers and our residents the best possible experience. And I am proud of the programme that's underway, and I hope very soon that we can be incredibly proud of the results that come from it.
Thank you. Could I ask question 7 now, please, albeit that we've gone over time?
We have gone over time, but go on, Richard, if you'd like to ask.
Well, I'm grateful, and could I, before doing so, remind you, Leader, that I have 3 outstanding questions from the 18th of June Cabinet, to which I was promised written replies. I haven't had them. They're all important topics, principally to do with education and the COVID crisis, so I look forward to hearing them from the portfolio holders soon. So my final one, which was meant for Councillor Swersky, is what is the administration's policy on commercial property investments?
And Councillor Almond, our policy framework for commercial investments remains unchanged from the one that we set out in 2015, which set certain return thresholds and risk appetite for the council. We have over that period of time made 5 purchases in property investments, which are and continue to generate return for the council that we can reinvest in our services. As you'll know, and no doubt your supplementary will allude to, we did make a big allocation in our capital programme towards further commercial investments, which would be based on a sound and rigorous strategy. Events have overtaken that, and we will now not be expecting to make considerable further investments in the future.
I did notice that in your outturn report tonight, there's reference to the capital programme being paused, and also to the CIPFA advice recently that such investments in commercial property won't be any longer be regarded as prudent borrowing. First of all, is the money we've already put into commercial properties, which is substantial, still regarded as having been prudent borrowing and investment? And second, at Performance and Finance in July, the finance director sitting alongside you said that, and this was off the policy of investing in commercial properties, we won't be following that policy now. That sounded rather more than pausing. So which is it? And of course, it's important bearing in mind that when you brought your paper to Cabinet a year ago, commercial investments, one of the 4 key strands to which you were looking to supplement the council's income going forward over the long period.
And I think, Councillor Ahmed, you're right. We have made 5 investments, and they're not insubstantial. If you look at the ocean of commercial property investors among local authorities, we are but a small fish in that ocean, and it's one of the few occasions in which I can be proud to say that we are just a small fish. We did not go heavily into commercial property investments, and one of the reasons we've only made 5 investments is because we took our time and made sure that we were only willing to invest in the highest class of assets. And that's why to date, I'm still confident that those assets that we have invested in are still valuable and continue to still generate returns to the council, even during an event as disruptive as the pandemic. Now, when it comes to looking forward, you're right. I think there's 2 things that have taken place. One is that the guidance from SIPA has tightened, something that I think we've been expecting for some time. And the second is, of course, that the investment market has changed dramatically. And so, of course, we'll make further announcements in due course as we move towards our draft budget and future capital programme. But I think you can expect that we won't be making significant future commercial property investments in that same way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. That does conclude all the councillor questions, although I take your point, Richard, about previous ones not responded to, and we'll chase that up.
Thank you.
That moves us on to item number 6, which is the key decision schedule for September-November 2020. Can Cabinet note the key decision schedule? I note people nodding and in agreement. I don't see any dissension to that. Oh, Paul. Paul has a question on the... You need to unmute first, though, Paul.
Yeah, I know. I just would like to point out on this, there's been a number of things, not least the streetscape proposals that weren't included on the key decision schedules, even though they were key decisions. I just think it might be helpful if officers take another view at that schedule and make sure that things that might be coming up in the future were put on with sufficient notice for both councillors and members of the public to be aware of them. Thank you.
Thank you. We note your comments about the future of the key decision schedule. I can't see any, so we just note the schedule. Progress on scrutiny projects. Can Cabinet note the update, which is on page 15? I think I don't see any dissension, so that we agreed. So we note that part of the report. This moves us on to item number 8, which is the local outbreak control and intervention for COVID-19. That report is in my name. I think COVID-19 has hit our communities hard, and it is quite clear that it has not gone away. We are still in the middle of the biggest health and economic crisis in over 70 years. So the council is working hard to mitigate the risk of infections amongst the Harrow community, and are working closely with partners to ensure that we are doing as much as possible to keep Harrow safe. Officers have been working closely with schools, the health service, shops and businesses, communities and faith groups, with plans and actions in place to try and make Harrow as safe as possible. It is hard, time-consuming work, which has also meant officers have been drafted in from other roles across the council to support this Keep Harrow Safe campaign. And despite all the preventative work, we're also working closely with health to prepare for an possible surge in COVID cases, but also the winter flu, which affects many of our residents over the winter. You will be aware from the press and social media that the number of cases being reported in Harrow has increased to over 20 cases per 100,000 residents, which puts us into what is called an area of national concern. To put that into some form of perspective, some of the boroughs around Manchester are reporting around 100 cases per 100,000 residents. So we're not in a crisis situation at this moment in time. This report is about being prepared. You will also noted from the national press the massive pressures on the current test and trace system, which also goes to highlight the extreme pressures that the council is operating within. I think the main challenge is to maintain and extend the behaviour patterns that has reduced the infections in Harrow. Things like being aware, social distancing, wearing face masks and hand washing all go to stop the spread of the virus. And this report tonight, in view of the rising numbers locally, I think is very timely, as it sets out how the council will respond to rising infections or a local outbreak, and where the council will intervene if someone's actions could facilitate the spread of this terrible virus. The report sets out how the council will reach out further to the community to raise awareness and importance of test and trace, the importance of PPE and face masks, and especially in shops, identifying the symptoms and when to get tested. It also sets out the individual responsibilities of residents and businesses if we are to contain the virus, and also how the council will respond to local or major outbreaks. And while government legislation requires businesses to have due regard to national guidance documents, many do not have an enforceable element attached, meaning it just remains best practice. However, the council does have powers under the health and safety legislation and the coronavirus regulations that have been changed as recent, going to be changed from Monday onwards, to impose restrictions on premises, and will not hesitate to do so if that is required in serious cases or to control the spread of the virus. Recommendation 3 on the report authorises council officers to take that action if and when required. And whilst we have been given limited powers to enforce the guidance, I sincerely hope that I don't have to pick up the phone like other council leaders around the country to speak to the Secretary of State as the government introduces more stringent lockdown measures in Harrow because the infection rate is escalating across the borough. I also sincerely hope that the vaccine can be found soon. In the meantime, I look forward to working with the people of Harrow, collectively across everywhere, to reduce the spread of the virus as far as possible and to keep our residents safe. And the report tonight is how far the council can intervene and what actions it will take as those positions become notifiable. So thank you. Do we have any questions? I see Councillor Paul Osborne, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I mean, obviously, I would welcome this report and support the council's actions in dealing with this very difficult outbreak, working across London and also with the national government. I just had a specific question, and I'm sorry I can't have a page number because of the way this is showing on my screen, around the community engagement for test and trace. It specifically identifies a number of groups: Somali, Romanian, Tamil, African, Caribbean. I just wondered what the data to support targeting those groups were. Obviously, given the limited resources and the importance of reaching as many people as we can, I just think it's important when we do these community engagement that we do it in a data-led fashion rather than just necessarily groups we already know and work with.
Yeah, I can answer part of the question. The officers are there, and I see Sean will come in, but I would like to comment that during the initial outbreak of the COVID-19 crisis, as it was from March, the response back from the health service was saying that there was a lack of understanding, I think, between some of these communities, that we weren't reaching out as far as we could do. That's not just the council, that's the health service also didn't adjust its approach to how to respond and get involved with the communities. We have done a lot of work in Harrow around that communication, and that's why we're trying to focus around some of that, just to keep the messaging moving amongst those communities. Before I take any other councillor, if I bring in Sean, who is Sean is the Chief Executive of Harrow Council, but he's also the lead across North West London on the health response as well.
Yes, if I may, Chair, I think it might be helpful to bring in Alex Dewsnap, who's also indicated on this particular item. So I think I just wanted to answer Councillor Osborne's questions at a strategic level, and I think Alex may be able to follow up in terms of detail. I suppose the first thing is I want to reassure Councillor Osborne that we are as data and intelligence led as we are able to be. There is increasing data in terms of understanding precisely down to the individual addresses of where people who are testing positive are, which is now coming forward to our public health team. And in addition, we receive information and intelligence from the NHS in terms of what they are finding out through their interaction with local people and patients. In essence, that is what is, and then as part of our local response, which is referred to in the report, the Director of Public Health, along with partners, convenes an incident management team to look at the data and to put in place a response. And it is the work of the incident management team based on the intelligence and the data which has led to the response in terms of targeting these particular communities. I think it's fair to say that picking out patterns, identifying trends and being absolutely certain about all areas that we may need to reach is still work in progress, but it is definitely the case that we are targeting based on the best information, intelligence and data that we have at the moment.
Thank you, Sean. Alex, did you want to give some more detail to the question?
Yes, very happy to, Chair. So in answer to the question, yes, it is data-led, but it's also intelligence-led from the perspective of groups that we know that we can work with and accelerate some of the work that we're doing on the communications and engagement on this. Very happy to share our initial analysis as to why we are targeting those groups, Councillor Osborne, so that you can see the evidence that's backing this up. Part of this is also about capacity and which groups we would go to first, more so than necessarily trying to do everybody at the same time, given the fact that we don't have all of the capacity we would want to do. We have, at this moment in time, developed videos with the Somali community, or in process of doing that with the Tamil community and with the Romanian community. And again, those will be shared more broadly. It's not just for Harrow residents necessarily. That messaging can also impact and support people from all parts of the UK.
Can I just very briefly thank the two officers for that answer? It's very helpful. I just am concerned if it's we are working with groups we know we can work with rather than necessarily groups that we need to work with. And I just think it's really important, and I'm happy to have that conversation around how we effectively target the groups that need to be targeted for that very important message that if you do develop symptoms, you isolate yourself, you get tested, and then you work with the contact tracers to ensure that other people can also be tested and isolated. So thank you very much for that.
Sorry, Chair, could I just quickly respond to that?
Yes, yeah, quickly.
So interestingly, some of the community, there is not necessarily community infrastructure in place, and we've had to try and work to create that infrastructure in order to make sure that we get that engagement right. So as an example, the Somali community, we have got the Harrow Association of Somali Voluntary Organisations that we can work with. With the Romanian community, we have a very fledgling infrastructure organisation that we set up as part of the Controlling Migration Fund support from MHCLG. So, you know, in that regard, we've had to try and strengthen that group and work with them in a slightly different way in order to try and make the impact there. But so yes, absolutely. But very happy that we pick this up at our next meeting, Paul.
Thank you, Alex. Christine, I see you have your hand up.
I do. Thank you, Leader. I'd like to contribute something which is a response on my own behalf, on behalf of the Directorate, but also to provide some information perhaps on the way things are at the moment. And I'm going to begin by thanking schools, head teachers and staff in Harrow schools and officers in Harrow Council for their unstinting hard work during the last months, built upon a strong local partnership with the welfare of children, young people and their families, and teachers and their families always at the forefront. I also want to pay tribute to the children's social care teams who have worked tirelessly, endlessly and risen to the challenge. And I suppose I could be accused of repetition in restating this, but it's very important to recognise the local partnerships, especially with schools, but also with health service providers throughout the last very fraught months, because these partnerships form the foundation of our management of the incidence of the virus in Harrow. We've had an excellent response in Harrow to the return to schools.
Our education officers and local public health officers are in daily contact with schools, offering advice and answering queries. And we have a strong partnership, but we need it. We need it because we face the next hurdle and because we are hearing from schools of the difficulties they are experiencing. Since the beginning of the lockdown, we have worked together to facilitate the sharing of information when the DFE did not always seem to understand that it was helpful to do so. We have provided training on issues for schools, on the instance of COVID-19 and on the logistics of returning to school. We did this before the end of the summer term. We are in constant daily contact with the DFE and the London Coronavirus Resource Centre. I had to get that right because acronyms always defeat me. Because we have heard from schools that they can't get through to the LCVRC on the telephone. They can't get a swift answer and advice on how to manage a positive test result, sometimes waiting 24 hours. This is very worrying. And we are now starting to see a rise in the instance of the virus in children and young people. And we have a number of schools where there are groups of children and young people isolating. The landscape is constantly changing. We are all having to try to make sense of the national test, track, trace service, or whatever it's being called at the moment. I can't keep track with that. This is a national problem which is affecting us locally, and it needs a proper national government solution, not throwing snowballs at the moon. Parents want their children to be safe, and so do we. And this will always be the basis of our plans to manage any further escalations as we go forward as partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. It's a good point to make around the work that schools have done to make sure that the children can return in a very safe environment. Simon.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, as we've been saying, this report details what we, that's the local authority and all our partners in Harrow, particularly the voluntary sector, particularly health, particularly schools, are doing and what we're planning to do to combat and manage any local outbreaks of COVID in the future in Harrow. Just looking at Harrow, the number of cases in Harrow, as you said, Leader, and across London has been rising, not dramatically, but steadily, and now we are over the 20 per 100,000 figure. This can be managed, but really, in my view, we do need a much more robust, a much more speedy and functioning test and trace regime in place. And government just hasn't stepped up to the plate yet, not providing it, in spite of all the fine words that Councillor Swirsky reminded me of a few minutes ago, when someone somewhere said we would have a world-beating, world-class test and trace system in place by sometime quite a long time ago. Not quite there yet. So in this week in Harrow, we've seen lots of people who can't get a test, non-available. We've also seen quite a lot of people who can't even get onto the computer system to find out that they can't get a test. Computer says no way. And then when some people do get through and do book a test, they're finding that they have to travel miles and miles to get that test. And quite often people not having cars would have to travel on public transport, which they shouldn't really be doing, given that they should be social distancing and self-isolating. And then we have numbers and figures and concerns from the care homes that have completed tests on their staff, as they should be doing, and then sent them off, and then they've waited and waited and are still waiting in some cases to get the results. So are these members of staff still okay to work with our most vulnerable residents or not? Well, we don't really know. This is something that needs immediate attention. Really, I look at it, I think the health situation is somewhat shambolic. People have been saying this week, maybe test and trace is close to collapse. I very much hope not. Government must take action. Stop going around blaming other people, take responsibility and get moving and get it up and running and functioning. We must be able to locally give tests to all those who need it and get back speedy results. We've covered, other people have covered the work that we're doing with the communities in our borough, with the communications to make sure everyone is aware of what they need to do, how to recognise if they have symptoms. And we're working with local health and London-wide health partners to look at how we can set up local testing centres in South Harrow and elsewhere in the borough or shared across borough boundaries, so it makes it much easier for individuals to get tests. And we're asking everyone to do, and I'm asking everyone to do everything in their power to keep Harrow safe. We've seen the figures are showing that the age groups highest in the numbers of positive cases are the younger age groups, not necessarily just young people, but younger. And there's a number of reasons behind that, of people going back to work, travelling more on public transport, going into venues, into shops, into restaurants, etc. And I think we have to remind people the virus hasn't gone away. We have to remain vigilant. So social distancing remains vitally important. So, for example, when you go down to Harrow Town Centre, and we've seen examples down there where people have, let's say, become a little bit relaxed about social distancing in their local shops and entertainment venues. Remember, this thing has not gone away. So we have to, as Graham has said, keep our distance, wash our hands, wear masks, keep vigilant. And that's the message. And that's what I need to get across to everyone in Harrow. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Simon. Was there anyone else? I don't see anyone else indicating. Just on the points that we made, I didn't follow up straight from Paul's points, but I think what we're heavily relying on is the relationships we built up across the voluntary and community sector and faith sector during the pandemic itself, to actually doing this jointly to try and maintain sort of low levels of infections across Harrow. So when we're talking about how we target it's not target some of our communications and support. It's around working with those communities to make sure that we're sending the right messages and working with them rather than telling them what to do. And that's seen some very good benefits across the borough as communities are starting to respond and sort of behave themselves. There is that concern, and we've all seen it, around people ignoring all the guidance is the easiest way to say it. They're going into shops without wearing a face mask, but also meeting in large groups regularly. And you know, hopefully we don't see that too much in Harrow compared to some other boroughs where we've seen it on television. But it does happen, and it's something we've got to reach out to those people and explain why, you know, we're trying to keep that social distancing in place until that vaccine can be found or the testing can be put in place properly. But if we had a proper testing system and I think, you know, a quick response to that testing, then we'd be in a better place and we'd be able to sort of take more sort of freedom a bit better. But it goes back to Richard Orman's question earlier on about when do we have face-to-face meetings, and it's when we can sort of guarantee that we can meet in a safe environment, and at this moment in time we can't. But this report talks about how we communicate better with the residents. It talks about how we work better with the community sector and voluntary sector, and that's what we want to talk about, is how we work together to try and reduce the infection rate and keep that infection rate low. We know it won't go away, but it's maintaining it and controlling it. And I think, you know, the report sells that very well, about it's not Harrow Council doing it, it's Harrow as a community, how Harrow community responds to maintain that low figures. So the recommendations are on the report tonight. There's 2 delegations and which are on page 17 and 18. So we're noting how we're going to manage it, but there's 2 delegations there as well. So our cabinet agree with the recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. We now move on to item number 9 on my paperwork. It's the Harrow Strategic Development Partnership appointment of preferred bidder. Before we get into this item, can I ask that the confidential appendices, which is shown at item 14, are just noted here. If there are questions on these documents, we will need to move into a private session, which I wouldn't particularly want to do, but if necessary, we will. Please note that there is also a reference from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on this item, which is set out in the published supplemental agenda. And during this item, I will be asking Councillor Sachin Shah, who is Chair of Scrutiny, to report back the views from this meeting. I'd just like to make some initial comments before I pass this over. This decision tonight is probably the most important and far-reaching decision that has come to Cabinet in a number of years, with the partnership being the largest investment and development opportunity Harrow has seen, and will create an inviting, attractive and thriving Wealdstone High Street that also generates apprenticeships, training and wealth in the borough. I'll reserve my overall comments until the end of the report, but would just like to take this opportunity to thank all those involved who got us to this position tonight. And I have to say, it's not been easy. There have been many late nights, late night briefings, meetings, and socially distanced meetings when it was through COVID. And it's a credit to all those involved to be able to get to this report tonight, very close to where our original timetable set out. And I think that's very important to thank the people, because when we sent this to Cabinet last year on the timetable, was hoping to bring it back slightly earlier, but COVID has intervened, and we're just a couple of months. We wanted to make sure that this report was right, that it had the proper scrutiny going forward to allow the Scrutiny Committee to look at it before coming to Cabinet, and then also to allow that openness and transparency for councillors to see and make sure that they're fully up to speed and in confidence with the actual report itself. So I'd like to hand over to Councillor Ferry, who will introduce the report.
Thank you, Leader. Regeneration has always been a top priority of this administration. I'm sure nobody has missed our strapline Build Better Harrow. And that's not just physical building, that's building the infrastructure and community that Harrow deserves. It involves providing jobs for members of the community, homes for people to live in, education, health and leisure facilities for our residents. 6 years ago, we started out on the regeneration of our council assets. This followed on from the publication of the Regeneration Strategy 2015 to 2026. Our first function was to look at our civic centre, and it was quite easy to decide that the civic centre was not fit for purpose. It's structurally unsound and has been for a number of years. It's wasteful of internal and external space. It has a high maintenance cost, not to mention the gas and electricity bills being astronomical. It doesn't have any air conditioning, as we've all seen when we've had a hot summer. It's certainly not fit for 21st century information technology, and it also occupies a prime site for housing. So we decided that we had to move. Many sites were considered, and I believe initially we identified probably in the order of 50 sites throughout the borough and a couple of sites outside the borough. This was drawn down to 5 sites: Greenhill Way, the depot site, the leisure centre site, Peel Road car park, and the present civic centre site. For all of these 5 sites, we did preliminary designs, we did cost models of how much the development would cost, and we looked at the benefits and disadvantage of all 5 sites. Eventually, the location of the civic centre site was chosen to be the Peel Road car park, and this was confirmed by Cabinet. Having taken that decision, we did numerous public consultations. I think we did at least 4 on the present civic centre site, 3 on the leisure centre site, And I well remember at one of the last consultations, one of the participants came up to me and said, when are you going to stop doing the consultations and start doing the construction? Well, we did start thinking about construction, and we had 4 alternatives. We could have sold all 3 sites and asked somebody to build a civic centre. We could have delivered them ourselves, but the lack of construction expertise and experience that we have within the council didn't present itself as the best alternative. We could have had a development agreement with a developer where we told them what we wanted and they went away and provided it, or we could have had a strategic development partnership, and that was the route that we chose, and it was endorsed by Cabinet in May 2019, 15 months ago. We then started on a very lengthy procurement process. We sent out expressions of interest to the development industry. 13 organisations requested that they were issued with a selection questionnaire. 5 companies were chosen from the replies to that selection questionnaire and invited to submit outlined solutions. 3 of those 5 companies were then invited to submit final tenders. 1 withdrew after the final tender stage, leaving us with 2 bidders. The Public Contracts Regulations 2015, which governed the procurement process, does not allow members, elected members, to be involved in that procurement process, but I can assure everybody that all the people that needed to know were involved with progress updates during that process. During the bids, we provided 3 cast iron unmovable parameters. That was that to provide us a civic centre site, and that the civic centre site should be at no cost to the council's general fund, and we should also attempt to maximise affordable housing. A couple of weeks ago, this was considered by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and Sachin Shah, the chair of the Scrutiny Committee, will comment later on. This is a 3-stage process, as it says in the report. Tonight, we are selecting the partner to go forward in this process. In the coming few weeks and months, we would look at the accommodation requirements of the council going forward, which will inform the size of the civic centre and where we will be working in the coming years. And in the early part of 2021, and I hope it will be the Cabinet meeting of February 2021, we will formally form the Harrow Strategic Development Partnership, which will be a limited partnership, a limited liability partnership. Before we can produce that report in February 2021, we have to draw up the contract documents. We have to do a business plan for all 3 sites, and we have to look at the constitution of a shadow board. As the leader said, this is probably the biggest council decision that has been made in a lifetime, probably the biggest decision that this council has ever made. And when we launched our search last summer, we were looking for a partner with experience, expertise and commitment to deliver these projects and to share our aspirations for what we believe Wealdstone can become. And I believe that we have found that in bidder B. I'd like to thank Avison Young and Pinsent Masons, who have held our hand through the last 15 months to reach this point. And I would like to thank all officers, and I won't single out any officer because there's been a myriad of officers involved in getting us to this stage, for their help and assistance. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Keith. That's well explained. Adam, do you want to?
Thank you, Leader, and I would echo everything that Councillor Ferry just said, in particular to say thank you to the teams, the officers, our advisors as well. It was a fantastic amount of work over a long period of time, particularly over the procurement process. It is a hugely complex but also extremely important programme. And I think what's really important, and I think comes across strongly from the report tonight, is that this was a very robust procurement. We went in with a tough set of objectives, and we wanted to make sure we got a partner out of this who could deliver on across all those objectives. I think we can be confident that having gone through this very rigorous programme involving, as Councillor Ferry said, a large number of officers and also advisors, that we've got the right outcome from that. I think if we look at the objectives that we set, we wanted to make sure that we got really strong housing developments and placemaking across important sites in Harrow with maximum affordable housing. We also wanted a new civic centre to a high standard, and we wanted to deliver that in a way that is cost neutral, which minimises the borrowing risks of the council and the ultimate cost to the taxpayer. And I think we can be confident tonight, not only with the partner that we've selected, but also with the process that we've outlined, that we will get to really strong results across all of those. As the finance lead, I feel I should say just a couple of words on the finances. Our previous efforts in this domain saw us forecasting very significant borrowing. We were rightly questioned by colleagues about whether that was the right approach in terms of the scale of borrowing that would be undertaken if we did this by ourselves. I'm pleased to say that we can see in the report tonight that our borrowing levels are dramatically reduced. Of course, we expect the entire amounts to be repaid, but even looking at the profile of spend across the next 10, 20, 30 years, our peak borrowing remains orders of magnitude below where we would have forecast under a different approach. And if you look at, I thought, a helpful commentary from our partner, our advisors, Alison Young, in the report, that it points out in terms of the submission from the preferred bidder, that the financial proposition provides the council with a balanced risk-reward profile while delivering significant affordable housing, achieving the minimum requirement of cost neutrality in relation to Harrow New Civic, and goes on to say the proposal submitted helps the council to minimise the council's exposure to any borrowing taken out in relation to the New Civic Centre, which reduces the ongoing risk to the council's general fund. So we can go into what is, as Councillor Crowe said, one of the most significant programmes that this council will undertake this generation, with huge potential impact, positive impact on Harrow in terms of new housing, new places, new investment, and a new modern civic facility. And we can go into that while minimising the financial risk to the council. So I think we've got a really strong result, and I'd finally echo Councillor Ferry's thanks to all those involved in delivering it.
Thank you, Adam. Very good. Now I'd like to invite Councillor Sachin Shah, who's Chair of Scrutiny, and he went to Scrutiny, I think, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Leader. And I'm going to first start where both Keith and Adam finished, with a thanks to officers. In my time as Chair of Review and Scrutiny Committee, I'm always demanding of officers to provide more information, to provide it quicker, and to make themselves open to question. Every time through this process on this regen programme, every time I have challenged, officers have risen to that challenge and have beaten it and have provided all the information at the time that the committee has needed it. We've had, as well as the formal sessions, we had an informal session at the start of August, which Keith also attended, and that was very useful as well, because it allowed the committee to get up to speed fully before the meeting we had last week. And prior to that, we've also had a number of other meetings and separate briefings for myself and Stephen Greek as vice chair with the officers as well. So I really do want to thank officers and our external advisors for the effort that's been put in helping the scrutiny committee with this. In terms of the committee's view, there's a supplementary report for you, which I think goes to 10 pages long in terms of setting out the committee's views. So I'm not going to read those out. I'm sure you've read those, or at least skimmed it and understand where we've come from. So I thought I would use my few minutes here to talk about where the committee might provide advice to Cabinet on what areas should be looked at. The committee spent quite a bit of time in considering governance matters. This is a major joint partner that the council is going to choose with bidder B, and the governance is going to be very important in as the portfolio had pointed out. There'll be a joint board made up with council officers and the bidders' representatives as well, and ensuring the governance is correct and able to ensure that all the information that is available to the bidder is also available to both the scrutiny committee but also to non-board members of Cabinet is really important, and I urge Cabinet to make sure you look at that strongly. The risk on this is quite high, as both Graham and Keith and Adam have said. This will be our largest contract the council has signed, and therefore understanding the risk to the council, both there's always going to be a financial risk, but reputational risk. There's operational risk. This body is going to be building a new civic centre for us. Well, if that isn't built, then where do we operate from? There's lots of things that we definitely need to use that centre for. So the risk, understanding the risk and understanding how that is monitored and mitigated will be very important. I urge Cabinet to continue the work doing to keep a hold of that risk register, and certainly Scrutiny Committee will be looking at that as well. On issues of finances, the committee spent quite a bit of time over all of our sessions looking at this cost neutrality of the Civic Centre. The definitions are can be fluid, and different people have a different view of what cost neutrality of the Civic Centre is. My personal view, this is not the committee's view, my personal views, the council should push forward beyond that now and start thinking about, well, now there is a bidder in place, what are we going to do and how are we going to use the finances correctly. I'd also say that the committee did spend quite a bit of time, and inevitably will come back at some point, to the question around how profit is shared between the two joint partners. A lot of the financial modelling is based on an assumption that cash comes in at certain amounts of time, which is tied into selling the non-affordable parts of the development, and therefore if that doesn't happen, the cash flows might change, or if that shifted, the cash flows might change. And to remind Cabinet that not only must we get the capital money that we put in, the land value as well must come back to the council. In terms of future, an area the Scrutiny Committee has certainly asked for, and we are working with officers to implement this, and I'd certainly suggest Cabinet also takes this on board, is getting some training. There is some quite substantial decisions being made here, and quite a lot of information, legalese, finance that needs to be gone through to understand the risk register, and the Scrutiny Committee will be taking up some training, hopefully with our external advisors, on understanding that a bit more to allow us to do our role in scrutinising the work, and maybe I suggest that's something maybe Cabinet members would look at as well. The question in light of Black Lives Matters and other, where diversity is now higher, I would certainly urge the Cabinet to look at how this huge programme can enhance diversity programmes. We know there have been other councils in the media who've been criticised for their panel of architects, or including no ethnic minorities whatsoever. This is something Harrow Council, through its Black Lives Matters working group and others, can look at how this project can take forward the diversity. And finally, we had a long conversation around the affordable product that will be coming out of it. There was a question, about whether this is policy or not, and that will come for another day. However, one area I would urge Cabinet to consider as an option that offers put to us is that the affordable part of the development be taken on by the council's housing revenue account rather than used by a private registered provider. I think the screening committee do agree that would be the preferable way to go, and I hope Cabinet considers that. That's where I'm going to leave the discussion. We know that there are another 2 parts to this, the deciding on exactly the scheme and further. So we will continue our work, and I hope to come back to Cabinet after future decisions to talk about how we will scrutinise those as well. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Sachin, for your contribution here. And could you please pass our thanks on to Scrutiny? You've taken the time. It's quite a major project, and it was some of the reviews were taking place over the normal time when people are away, but they did sort of commit to looking at it, and they've done a really good job at doing so within the timescales available. And
I'll certainly do that.
Thank you very much. I see some hands going up. Paul, Mr. Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I just need to get to the thing. It's difficult to know where to start when it comes to this project, and you have to laugh about it because the alternative is to cry. I think it's right to say that this is the biggest decision that the council has made in a generation. I think sadly it's also going to be right to say it's the biggest mistake the council has made in a generation. And I just think there's a number of points I'd like to make. First of all, when Councillor Henson said that we are sticking to the original timetable, it's worth noting that the original timetable of how us moved into the building last year, the new Civic Centre building that is, it has been nowhere near the original timetable. It's in the current timetable that you agreed after changing it about 5 times. It's worth noting this project has been through 3 at least leaders of the council, 3 chief executives and 3 lead officers, all coming and going and changing the scheme as they go through. I was then interested to hear that we are going to work out our requirements after we've made this decision for a new civic centre. Again, totally omitting the fact that we have done a detailed plan and indeed applied for and received planning application for a new civic centre, costing millions and millions of pounds. We then get on to some of the options that Councillor Ferry outlined around whether or not we build it ourselves, whether or not we have a strategic development partner, whether or not we do. Again, it's worth noting, if you go back to the beginning of the scheme was meant to deliver millions of pounds of revenue to the council, millions of pounds every year of revenue. It was meant to be a private rented sector set out and run by us for an independent company that we set up. I just think it's incredible. What I do believe, and it's set out in the papers actually, there's the options to be considered, that the option that is not being properly considered in my view is option 2.2.3, which is to reassess given where the world is at the moment. I think to make a decision of this magnitude with this many far-reaching consequences, when we have no idea what the commercial property sector is going to look like in the next few years, and indeed we heard on an earlier item the council looking at not investing in more commercial property and looking at the commercial property it owns, what effect that has and what effect the ability that has of Harrow as a council to maybe get some commercial property in central Harrow rather than building a new civic centre. I also fundamentally think that by giving up all of this land, we should be looking at making a significant return for the council rather than just being cost neutral. I'm not at all convinced that this is cost neutral. I think you have to ignore a whole load of costs and a whole load of revenue that you could have otherwise achieved, not least from the depot development, in order to try and argue that it's cost neutral. The reality is it's nowhere near that. I think that this whole development is going to end up with a whole load of unsuitable flats in very high-rise buildings across Harrow. I don't think there's been any meaningful consultation of the residents of Harrow as to whether that's what they want and that's the type of houses they want. I think it's really important, especially with what we've seen over the last few months with COVID, that we are very clear that the increased use of high-rise buildings with not enough communal space needs to be drastically looked at and addressed in all our plans. And I say to all members of the Cabinet, you know, you're going to act in haste and repent at leisure. Once you make this decision and head down this path, you are more and more committing the council for a problem that will potentially bankrupt it in the future. It's not the right time to do it, and it's not the right scheme. It's not the right place for a new civic centre. There's so many things that we have a problem with. And I think to make a decision of this magnitude without taking a significantly large opposition group with you, again, has a fundamental risk attached at the heart of the project. And I am really, really concerned that we get lumbered with this disaster and have to try and fix it when we win in 2022. Thank you, Leader.
I note your comments, Paul. I must say they're consistent in opposition to a number of things. I've got sorry, John Higgins. Are you there?
Yes, Chair. Yeah.
Yeah. You said you indicated that you would like to comment as well.
Yes, it's a small point really, and I note in the report that part of the requirement from the partner is to provide social value, both to local businesses, community, but also the voluntary sector, which clearly is very welcomed. I suppose my plea is that in terms of the voluntary sector, that the discussions around what that might be and how it might be happen with the voluntary sector early on. We've had instances before where contracts have been let and something in terms of social value is delivered by the contractor, but it may not be what's helpful or useful at that moment in time to the sector. So I suppose my plea would be that that happens in a sense in a sort of co-production way, such that the sector's involved very early on in the discussions. What might social value components look like in respect of the sector, really. So yeah, so it's a small point, but I think it's one that the sector has found in the past that it hasn't always delivered quite what would be most beneficial.
Thank you, John. We do try moving things forward within partnership and negotiation. Keith, could you set out how that would work in practice, or Adam, who's responsible for contracts, because we brought that social value into all of our contracts a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean we've got a social value protocol and policy, and we've been very successful in engaging with lots of local suppliers, and of course, as you pointed out, right at the start of this COVID outbreak, we just couldn't have distributed the food without the help of the voluntary sector. The social value part of it will be that we will employ probably in the order of about 130 apprentices in the construction of this, and also we hope that at least 90 million will flow into the local economy. There are a number of ways that the voluntary sector can help us, but we will discuss those when we get our partner on board, because it is very much a partnership. You know, we've looked at their bid, and the particular firm on the bidder B does have a very large and probably the largest in the country social value component to it. I can't tell you who it is, but when you find out from the press release, which is going out 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, they are very well known for working with communities and also for providing benefits to communities through the voluntary sector.
Thank you, Keith. We have Adam and then Julian Wayne. Adam?
I wasn't going to add to that point. I can come back on some Paul's points if that's helpful.
Okay, can I just get Julian to come in to answer John's point, and then if you want to come back to answer Paul's. So Julian, did you want?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just to build on what Councillor Ferry said, and just to make it absolutely clear for Cabinet, within the submission, within the final tender, Bidder B has provided a significant amount of information about their proposals. As Councillor Ferry quite rightly says, this is an area which they are very enthusiastic about and particularly keen about. And just to directly address Councillor Higgins' point, there is a section on actually supporting the community and support to be offered to community and voluntary organisations as a direct result of this contract. One of the very early things that your officers will be doing will be establishing dialogue with the partners in terms of how to implement the various work streams, of which social value will be one, and clearly something that's about community support could not be done without the involvement at an early stage of the community. So happy to provide some reassurance on that.
Thank you, Julian. Adam, did you want to pick up some points that Paul had made?
I'll just pick up a couple of points, Leader. I wanted to thank Councillor Shah actually for, I thought, very constructive and helpful comments. Clearly detailed, based on detailed analysis of the report by Overunion Scrutiny Committee. Unfortunately, we didn't get that level of detailed instruction comments from the opposition, which I thought was a shame, because I thought we moved away from that sort of blanket obstructionism that we'd seen in the past from Harrow Conservatives. But you know, I think it's extraordinary at a time when we know that unemployment in Harrow is rising, at a time when the housing crisis is as intense as it's ever been, and a time when our buildings, our existing infrastructure is proving increasingly unworkable because of COVID, that we wouldn't go full steam ahead and invest significantly, move forward with big investments in the Harrow economy, in Harrow jobs and in Harrow homes. And I think to Councillor Osborne's point about the world having changed, well, there is opportunity over the coming months to go back over that business case to make sure that our assumptions are robust. And of course, the partnership is all about making sure that there is a structure in place to respond to events over time. And we expect, some things will inevitably change and we'll respond to them. But the idea that we should push pause at this stage and hold back on those major investments that will benefit the Harrow economy and Harrow residents is an extraordinary thought, and one that I would wholeheartedly oppose. I think we should go forward. We should make sure that we are progressing at pace, and of course, in the right way. We should be investing in Harrow.
Thank you, Adam. We did say at the beginning this is probably the most important session we make, so I will allow Paul, Councillor Osborne, wants to put his hand up to come back in to ask a further question, I think.
Just a couple of things. I mean, first of all, we don't have blanket opposition to things. We have very specific opposition to what we believe is a very unwise scheme that will lumber the council for a generation with all sorts of problems. We also think there is just so much going on and so much uncertainty that now is not the time to proceed. And it's all very well talking about, the importance of speed and everything. The fact is there's been a pause on this for a number of years whilst you've redone all your sums and worked out that your original plan was a total disaster. But the point I want to make is twofold. One, about the consultation. I do think it's important, and I would ask Cabinet to look at expanding the consultation that's been done beyond the residents panel that was set up, and have a much wider and deeper consultation, because I think there's a number of concerns, and it was raised by scrutiny that wasn't particularly reflective of the community, and I think it is important that that's done properly. And I also just wanted to ask a question to the legal officers on Councillor Ferry's point about a press release going out tomorrow. As far as I'm aware, this decision is subject to call-in and therefore can't be implemented until the call-in period has ended. So I think it'd be premature to send a press release before that period is done. I'm not saying that necessarily we're going to call it in, but the decision cannot be implemented until then. And there's also the potential, I suppose, if residents wanted to call it in as well.
Thank you, Paul. Whilst legal officers considering your point, Councillor O'Dell has indicated.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I'm very pleased that we're now moving forward on this development, particularly as being one of the councils that cover Wealdstone area. I'm very pleased that the outcome has proven that all the bidders and the preferred bidders still on track to help with the once in a lifetime generation, a much used term tonight, but this is a once time in the generation to help Wealdstone change for the better and improve the lives of the residents of Wealdstone. Wealdstone is changing. You walk down the high street, you can see numerous developments going ahead and improvements. All right, we've been knocked back by the lack of funding or withdrawal funding to TfL, but we have our own monies to improve the public realm in Wealdstone. And in reference to what Councillor Osborne said about consultation, I personally myself have attended at least 5 or 6 different consultations, whether it's at the Civic Centre or at Premier House, where residents were involved and have shaped the present plans, and hopefully I am confident that Bidder B will continue with this. If you read the documents like I have, they have a clear track record involving their local community they're working with, and I have every confidence of that. So I'm supporting this recommendation that we now get on with selecting that preferred bidder, and we now take forward the whole plan to move this thing forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. Hugh, as our monitoring officer.
Thank you, Leader. It's just to confirm that, as Councillor Osborne said, the decision is subject to call-in, and any publicity that is released during the call-in period will make it clear that the decision is subject to call-in.
Thank you, Hugh. Is there any other comments or questions? No, thank you. The reason I said I'd like to save my comments to the end, I think, is what people have actually said all the way through around this, you know, and Phil, Adam, Sachin, Keith have all said, and I've done it in that order. But I'd just like to thank the people who've been involved with this process over the last 15 months, because, you know, it's made sure that's kept us on track. It's made sure we've been fully up to date, and it's good to see the representatives from Avison Young here tonight. Ishdeep and Kimberley. It'd be strange to have a briefing without you being there, but you know, it's been very informative, and you brought that balance to you know, our concerns and questions that we may have had through the regular briefings about how the process was going, and to make sure we made the right choices. But also there's a number of officers, and we spoke to Julian spoken tonight, but we've had Paul Walker has been significantly involved throughout this process to make sure that we try and keep to that timetable that was set out last year, and Sean as the chief executive. But there's many others as well. We got Dawn just setting a lot of those briefings to make sure that we make, because it was the fundamental principle that Councillor Osborne has just mentioned about cost neutrality. And what that really was is that we didn't go out to borrow a lot of money to support something that meant done a drawdown on our revenue account when we were in such financial difficulty. Now, if we were properly funded by government on some of our revenue expenditure, then we could probably take that sort of risk, but we knew we couldn't with the uncertainty around the spending review. We still don't know what's happening. They promised us a lot of money right at the beginning around COVID-19, and we haven't seen all of that yet. And so, you know, the promises they make and statements they make have been rapidly undone and unravelling. So it's just sort of cements our choice. We made the right choice a year ago to say that we want to make sure there's no cost to the council. But that doesn't mean we don't get any of the benefits, because using the land we can build affordable housing, we can build a civic centre and all those jobs and office space that also comes in with this development. And I think it is a key reason we say it's the most important decision, because it makes so many positive changes to so many people's lives going forward. And that's the key part of it all. You know, for so long we could always turn around and say this is not the right time to make a decision, but change doesn't come if you just sit there and wait for it. You know, we could have sat back during COVID and done that and said, oh, we'll see how it goes and see what happens. But we didn't. We invested in things that were necessary and we moved forward, because we're an administration that would actually try and progress things and make those positive changes to people's lives. We're not just going to sit back and see how the weather goes to see what happens. We're going to try and test the water and push that as far as we can, because You know, we have too many people in this borough across London. You've seen it across the country. We do have a housing crisis in this country. We have a housing crisis in Harrow with people living in overcrowded accommodation, which has also been shown for over the last few months. We've seen people, you know, sort of the quality of the accommodation as well, and this is sort of an opportunity to improve some of that. So we're using our capability and our influence again to make sure we're making those positive choices to support the people of Harrow. So the recommendations are within the report tonight on page, to be honest, because it's on an iPad that's sort of moving around. I think I'm like other people that sort of moving between machines. You know, we're trying to move things forward and trying to move to new technology.
Page 30.
Page 30, thank you, Keith.
Page 30 and 31.
Thank you. So the recommendations are set out in the report on pages 30 and 31. Can we agree those recommendations?
Agreed.
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 So from Cabinet members, that was unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone. We now move on to the next report on the agenda, which is School Organisation Update and School Capital Programme. Christine.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. This is our annual report to Cabinet, which provides information on school role projections and school place planning and other initiatives, most particularly in this instance, progress with the Harrow's SEND programme, which is provision for children and young people with special educational needs. I'm requesting that Cabinet note the report and also delegate authority to the Corporate Director of People Services in consultation with the Finance Portfolio Holder and the Children's Portfolio Holder to undertake procurement. I'm also requesting that you agree to delegate authority to the Corporate Director of People and the Children's Portfolio Holder to identify and plan for projects to accord with the SEND strategy and to undertake procurement and award contracts as indicated. This is a comprehensive and well-written report, and the two authors are with us this evening. That is Joanna Morgan, who is the Divisional Director of People Services Strategy, and Rajeshri Palmer, who is the Head of School Organisation, Admissions and Attendance. I have asked them if they would provide us, each of them, sorry, that's my notes, if they would provide us with brief summaries of the two separate bits of the report, that is the school organisation and the SEND strategy. So I would be grateful if Joanna and Raj could help us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Robson. The report is, I'm sure you're familiar with the format of it because we've adopted it on an annual basis, and it gives a summary of where we are in terms of the primary, secondary and special school provision of places, and it also affords us the opportunity to publish our demographic projections, which guide us in how we look at the school places. In the primary sector, you'll recall that we've had a huge expansion and pressure on places over the last 10 years or so. That is now plateauing, and we're in a position whereby we're working with schools to manage the number of places and actually have made a couple of reductions so that we've taken out surplus places across the sector. In terms of the projections looking forward, the borough there are different issues in various parts of the borough, and we're looking at potential pressure in the central planning area, which is partly the regeneration area. We've got plans in place to increase the number of places through Harrow View School, which will open on the Kodak site, and also we've identified a site on Poets Corner. In terms of the secondary school places, we're in a slightly different position now because we brought forward expansions and increases in the school places a couple of years ago. Looking forward, there is going to be pressure and it's going to increase gradually, but we're working with head teachers to look at how we can manage that increase in demand through bulge classes across the sector.
In terms of the special schools, we have increased the number of places by expanding our existing special schools and also opening additionally resourced units. Our strategy is to look at how we can increase the provision at our moderate learning difficulties schools so that they can accommodate children with more complex needs, and to complement that with increasing the number of additionally resourced units in our mainstream schools. Delivering this is very difficult, but we are doing. Our success is based on our ability to work with schools as partners, and I think that our success in the past has been that collaborative approach. We have, to support the delivery of our school organisation changes, we have a capital programme because we're very clear that where we do make changes, there needs to be appropriate accommodation. And the capital programme will include the increase in SEN provision and the secondary solutions as they are developed with secondary heads. And in addition, we are asking for delegations to support the amalgamation policy and the implementation of the programme that will support the most recent amalgamations at Pinner Park and Stag Lane schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jo. That was beautifully done.
Thank you, Jo. So I thought you said someone else, but thank you very much, Jo, for the update. The schools are an important part of Harrow, and we do have some very good schools, excellent schools. And also,
yes, we do indeed. Sorry, Jo was being both Jo and Raj in that instance. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I can't see any hands up, but we should note there's also going to be a school within the new development we just agreed on the previous report. So, you know, it is something that is looking at on a regular basis, and it's good that you're keeping, you know, these assessments have always been very close. So that's very good. So the recommendations are on page on 106 and 107. No, sorry, they're all on page 106. So do Cabinet agree all the recommendations?
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you very much. We now move on to item number 11, which is the Revenue and Capital Monitoring Report, which is the Q1, which talks about the Council's finances up to the 30th of June this year. Adam.
Thanks, Graham, and I'll be brief because with more opportunity to talk about the council finances in October and also, of course, in December when we set the draft budget for the year. I think this report does highlight just how difficult a period it has been with COVID and the extraordinary amounts of spending that have had to go out the door as a result, of course, all playing a critical role in keeping residents safe, protecting us from the virus, supporting the wider work around protecting the NHS as well. You'll see that the net impact is that we were forecasting before, without the impact of COVID, £500,000 underspend for the year, which would be in a very good position to be in. I'm accustomed at this time of year to normally be talking about a large forecast, a large overspend, so I would have been in a very good position without COVID, but the reality is with COVID, that's now looking like more like a £2 million, a £1.5 million overspend by the end of the year this year. That's because we've had to spend around £22 million this year if you look at related to COVID, or net impact of £22 million. We've received about £15 million government funding, expecting another around £5 million, so you can see that's about £2 million impact of COVID altogether for this year. The fact that we're not doing too badly for this year does somewhat obscure the fact that there is a much more significant ongoing impact, which we'll talk much more about in October, which is going to create enormous difficulties for ourselves, but of course councils across the country as we look to set our budget for next year. You'll see that the report also highlights that the total impact of COVID is estimated at around £38 million, of which £14 million is new spending and £24 million is lost income. And I'll take Paul's question, I think, at this stage.
Yes, Paul, did you have a question?
Yeah, I actually have three very, very brief questions just on specifics. So I'd like to understand, I mean, obviously I get we're in a very difficult place and as this only covers part of the COVID emergency, it's going to be difficult again in October. But I'd just like to understand a couple of lines. The facilities management overspend, is that related to extra cleaning or specific work that's being done for COVID, or is it related to something else? And just given the fact that the building is well, not being used, but being significantly less used than it was, and also then a prospect in at least the foreseeable future of us significantly increasing the number of people in that building, to what extent is that facilities management overspend likely to carry through for the rest of the year? The second question is around the depot income. Could you just outline exactly what the issue is? Is it COVID related, or is it to do with the project itself and the business case? And I'd just be grateful if either you, Adam, or officers can just reassure me that the depot project is on track and on schedule to meet its targets. And the third question I have is around, are there any abortive costs that we're going to have coming through the system to do with abandoned capital projects? And then I have a comment, but I'd like to have those questions answered first. Thank you.
Yeah, and Councillor Osborne, you've identified some of the challenges that we've been wrestling with for some time, actually pre-COVID. So facilities management has been a challenging area in terms of keeping it in track within the budget. It's an area that was the subject of a lot of attention as part of the work that we've done to make sure that all our community spend comes in within budget. And the reality is that, of course, we haven't been able to address some of those spends in the way that we would have done had our attention not been diverted to COVID matters. You'll see there's two particular issues there. One is an ongoing issue around our wider facilities management budget, and of course trying to keep that, make sure that we have the correct amount of money budgeted in that bucket, and really understanding what our assets require in terms of facilities management. And then there is a particular issue around schools cleaning as well, which we are addressing. In terms of depot income, this is something that, again, I think Councillor Almond's asked questions about in the past. It has been a challenge in terms of profiling of income and the timeline for construction of the depot, and we are very much on track around the construction of the depot site. But we are using the opportunity to have a thorough look at how we make sure that we get the best value from that asset. And that's partly around how we use it in the context of our own staff facility, but also in the context of services that we can provide more widely. So we will come back in due course on that, and that will be adjusted as we look to set our budget for next year. And then finally, in terms of abortive cost for capital, I wouldn't have the list to my fingers, but obviously if that was something you wanted to know more about, we could look into any capital projects that might involve some abortive costs. You know, it's quite a routine feature of the capital programme that as capital programmes change, the course of them changes, there are typically some abortive costs involved.
Thank you, Adam. Paul, you said you had a comment.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I understand that we've got another report coming next month. I just think this is, very high, got a very large amount of commentary as to where the problems are, but not so much in what we can do or what we are doing to mitigate some of these issues. And I just think it would be a helpful discussion to have in October as to how much of these problems we think will carry on, how much we can mitigate, and what steps we might have to take to bring that budget back into line by the end of the year, because obviously there might be some difficult decisions to make.
I think that's absolutely fair challenge, and you're happy to continue the conversation on that in these forums, in this forum, and also outside of it. I would say that these are, in the context of COVID, of course, we need to look at every item and make sure that we're on top of it. And this is what absolutely these are the areas you've identified, absolutely areas that will be a focus for us. I wouldn't say it's going to be the answer to our budget gap, but that's not to say that it doesn't require due attention. So happy to continue that conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Paul, I just got confused. You still had your hand up. I don't see any other hands up going up or any questions being asked. As Adam's highlighted, this report takes us into our mid-COVID response up to the end of June, and the real costs will be shown in the report coming to Cabinet in October, and I think that's when we do need a wider debate around. We have some more detail around some of those expenses. But I think really I'd like to thank Dawn, the Chief Exec and CSB and the team for managing the finances through such a really challenging time. It has not been easy, but with some proper support from government, I'm confident we can face the future challenges. And I say that because we've been on a number of calls with DCLG and the Treasury to try and talk about the effect COVID has had on local government. And when we set out in March, we was confident of the minister's comment that that we would have that support going through the COVID pandemic. A lot of it has not been forthcoming. We've also left ourselves in a very challenging position, like many other councils around the country, about the future post-21, about setting a budget. And some of those are quite significant risks, and they'll be articulated in the October return. But I do think the team have done exceptionally well. When you look at other councils that are having to present emergency budgets and sort of close to bankruptcy, that even us as a very low funded council, extremely low, because they've taken all our revenue support grants away a few years ago. But we are a very low funded council, but the team have managed our finances exceptionally well to get us where we are. And it's going back to Adam's first point. If COVID hadn't have happened, we would have been, on track within our budget as normal, and that's a record that's been taken for many years. That we've managed to sort of they've managed to keep us on the straight and narrow as such, and our finances well managed. We have to wait until the report in October, but we're also waiting for the announcements in December about where the financial arrangements of what we're going to get, because we do face significant challenges into the future. It's the more and more people are struggling through business rates and also through council tax. As unemployment rises, when the furlough scheme finishes, and all those other financial challenges, some of that will impact across the council's finances, and it's something that we will have to carry forward and have a resolution to. So going back to Adam's point, we will be open and transparent about our finances. We've nothing to hide. We've got a very good record to work with, and I'm sure we've got the capability of taking on those challenges in the future. So please pass our thanks on, Dawn and Sean, to the teams involved. They have done a remarkable job, and thank you, Adam, sort of keeping an eye on it and understanding it and translating it for us to Cabinet to make sure that we understood the positions. And at times it was very regular meetings, and it's simple things really that cost us a lot. Things like we came to Cabinet last month around the things to support the leisure centre contracts and other contracts, how we supported businesses, and also how we're supporting the ongoing mortuary costs that are in place in fear of a further pandemic. And all those things we've managed to contain within the budget so far, but it doesn't mean we can have an easy life going forward. It doesn't. We've got a serious problem going forward, but I'm sure we can set the budget in February next year. So thank you very much. And we move to the recommendations on the report. It does say we agreed the recommendations, which are on page 162. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Excellent.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. I haven't been notified of any other business, so thank you for your attendance tonight, everyone. It has been an important meeting, some bigger decisions have been made, but we're going to have to make big decisions in the future. And when we talk about that, that's sort of big, it had major impacts on people's lives. So it's very important that we make the right decisions, and I think we are. So that's very good. So thank you for your time tonight, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks all.